What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. We are diving into our new UFL MVP and championship quarterback, Adrian Martinez. And he has a pretty interesting path, right? In terms of going from college to undrafted to the UFL and how he's gone about working on some of his deficiencies, along that pathway. He comes in at 6'2", about 220-ish pounds, 24 years old. So you love the youth. You love what he's going to bring from an athleticism standpoint at the QB position. One of the more underrated things when you talk about building out and kind of creating a funnel for roster is this is a guy I peg as a practice squad developmental QB, right? He fits the exact prototype of kind of what you want there. Somebody who may not fit that model already on the roster. And you can point to Tyrod and you can still point to Jordan there. But for somebody that is going to be healthy for one and not as part of the actual game day roster, right? The 46-man team, I believe it is. So Adrian comes in, he can go out there and give you those looks that you're going to need to when you're talking about facing teams like Lamar Jackson, for example. Not saying he has the same level of athleticism, but just pointing out some of the dual threat guys that we're going to see in the league, right? Former top 100 recruit. He had a torn labrum coming out of high school his senior year, which made it all the more impressive that he still was able to land a pretty big or sign to Nebraska, right, as a pretty big signing. Spent 4 years there, won Nebraska's Offensive Back of the Year consecutively in 2019 and 2020. Transferred to Kansas after there using his COVID eligibility for a year, and then he ended up going undrafted in the 2023 class. Got picked up by the Lions, made it all the way down to final cuts, and then didn't really get another look. So got drafted as a rookie by the UFL. This is where the timeline gets a little confusing. So when undrafted, I think he got drafted as a rookie to the UFL to another team. Then the Lions actually signed him as a UDFA, made final cuts, and then he had an official contract from the Birmingham Stallions. Helped lead them to a 9-1 record. And then this is where you really need to dive into what his year spent with the Stallions has actually been, because you're going to see all the headlines just like I have on my video, right? UFL MVP. He led the UFL in rushing. And then, of course, you talk about, him being a 47-game starter coming in. All those kind of things looks good. But took the starting role from Matt Corral, former third-round pick in the NFL. So when you're just doing the surface-level thinking, you start to say, okay, well, this definitely feels like an NFL level quarterback, right? Now, not to say there's, that's not the case or anything, but Birmingham and Skip Holtz, the head coach there, very interesting team. Skip Holtz has kind of already gotten the moniker of quarterback whisperer for one, which does a huge favor for Adrian Martinez here. But he ran a dual quarterback system, right? So like the first two games or so, Adrian Martinez and Matt Corral were switching out every couple possessions. Then there was a game that only Adrian Martinez started, only a game that Matt Corral started before Holtz felt comfortable giving the starting role officially to Adrian. And then even from there, when you take a look at the playoff path for them, there was a point where Skip ended up benching Adrian Martinez in favor of Matt Corral in the second half after he threw a couple interceptions with them being down. I think it was 18-12. And Matt Corral helped lead a comeback. Skip ultimately felt comfortable, continued to give the starting opportunity to Adrian for their championship win over the Brahmas, who was our UFL All-Guard signing Cole Lavao. So I'm sure there'll be some fun, banter there from those guys. But this isn't just a consistent, I walked in, I earned the starting role, I led the team the entire way. This was definitely for the entire team, because Skip Holtz talked about he feels he has adequate depth at every piece along his roster. This was definitely a bunch of great wins by committee, and then you can separate the stretch of games that Martinez here just ended up starting by himself as a whole other ordeal. But some things I really liked: quick enough release, a dual threat, right? We talked about this a little bit earlier. Much better runner than passer, and I think that's still true to this day, even though I couldn't get into a ton of film from the Birmingham Stallions. I got to see some highlight plays from him. I didn't walk away overly impressed, but it did highlight a lot of what you love physically from Adrian. And again, that's kind of expected, right? The highlights are, it's not true film study. But the lower body explosion, you see it on film, and again, he's much faster than quicker, right? So where you can see Lamar Jackson take off, he only needs a step or two to really get the beat on anybody. It's not the same game that Adrian Martinez has, but he kind of has this like long striding, Mack pickup truck kind of speed where you're going to see guys bounce off him. You're going to see some guys that are going to try to make a business decision, and he's not a Cam Newton, but you can feel him picking up steam, and that it's going to be a tough time for guys in the back half of the defense trying to take him down. You pair that with the fact that he generally looks to run first, and my estimation on what I've seen from the highlights, he's not as comfortable being able to go through his progressions and his reads, which I think is a huge piece of that. But an underrated part of his game that I think you'll see people potentially kill him on is that his pocket presence, and it feeds into him kind of being a run first guy. But you can see him scanning on one side of the field, get a feel for a free rusher that comes by, or just somebody that gets cleanly beat off to his right, and you can see him take a step, and then he's looking to take off, right? So one of the other pieces I don't really, so it's kind of in tandem, right? That piece I love because it speaks to the fact that he can move around the pocket well enough. It's just something that you got to hone in on. The second piece, though, is you would love, as part of him taking off to run, still keeping his eyes downfield to look to make a big play. That's the benefit of being a dual threat quarterback, is that if that pocket collapses, or even if you're doing RPO type play, that the defense, they have to account for you, right? The eyes have to be very disciplined. The coverage in the secondary has to be extremely tight. Otherwise, when they're looking to come up to make a play, there's huge plays all over that could be made. So he does use his athleticism to help with creating plays in an improv role when things break down, but I wouldn't say that's his bread and butter. And then his arm strength. Literally, every blade of grass needs to be covered with him. It's not legendary level, but no play's dead until he goes on the ground or he ends up, running out of bounds. The play's dead, whatever. That guy can toss the ball last minute, and he can get it to only where his wide receiver can go and get it back into the pylon, cross the field across his body, right? So that kind of stuff really impressed me, because when you think the play is over, he can make things happen, kind of, Big Ben-esque type ability there. But as mentioned, decision making, not a strong suit, and I think more of that has to do with progression and maybe the talent that he had around him. You love, again, to see him. So the distinction I think here is that when you see him step up and he's taking off as if he's hitting the A or B gap, he's not looking to pass whatsoever. He's taking off and he's going to try to get a first down, and he generally does do that. If he's going outside of his tackle, right, outside of his pocket that his offensive line creates, and he's drifting left or right, then you can see him look to scramble, and he may try to, pick up the eyes and see if there's anybody that he can fling the ball to. A back foot thrower is one of the things that I've seen consistently enough, even on the highlights, where he doesn't get his feet set consistently at all. You'll see him try to drift, and because he knows that arm is a cannon, he's going to try to rocket some things in there. And between the if he had elite or even above average ball placement consistently, I would say you can get away with that, but it's not like he is a dot thrower either. So he has the rocket arm. You got to figure out a way to configure and calculate, dial up that accuracy for him a little bit more. And he's going to get tagged with the same label like the Josh Allens of the guys with the big arms who can maybe find a way with the right coaching staff to improve on something like that. But ultimately, I take a look at him and I do walk away impressed enough to say that he should make the practice squad, and he could be a interesting developmental option paired with Jordan Travis to continue to make some strong competition heading into next year, right? This isn't a guy that we're going to need to rely on at any point in 2024. When I look at training camp, I take a look at taking a chance on a guy like Adrian Martinez here. It does feel like a plus. He feels like he's capable of beating out Andrew Peasley, who's had a shaky training camp so far, or at least within the last practice. It's been pretty porous for him. So if he can do that, I think it's almost a given that he'll be on the practice squad. You hope that he doesn't show enough to where somebody's thinking they can carry him as their third QB. But that'll be the same conversations the Jets are having, depending on what this true Jordan Travis timeline for his recovery ends up looking like. So let me know what you guys ultimately think, though. I'm not sure if any of you guys really dived into the UFL and paid attention and whatnot. Drop any gems, comments, questions, etc. that you guys have, and I'll catch you again. Peace.